All right, so this knife thoughts video is going to be on this knife, and this is the CIVIVI Dogma. So specifically, it is the C2005B, which is this gray G10 model. And first off here, I want to say that CIVIVI sent this to me for review. So I didn't purchase this knife. It was sent to me by CIVIVI. So I wanted to make sure I put that out there right up front. It's a knife that I've been interested in, which I'll talk about why in a second here. But first of all, let's take a look at the packaging. So CIVIVI sends their knives in this kind of typical white box. And then they do come with a pouch, which is a nice touch if you want to store it or something like that. And in the pouch is the knife, and then a microfiber cloth, a little bit of instructions, and a couple stickers. So a nice little package for sure. But this is a knife that I have been interested in because it's got some interesting features. And the first thing you might notice about this knife is that it has this G10 that is jigged. So it's jigged G10. And that's something that you see on traditional knives. So to give you a couple examples, here's a gradation cutlery number 56, and here is a number 97. Both of them with somewhat similar jigging styles to the CIVIVI Dogma. And it also has some machining here on this G10 that makes this look like it is a bolster. Now it's not a bolster, but it makes it look that way. And so I thought that was really cool. I thought it was cool to see some of those features that are normally seen on traditional knives put onto a modern knife like this. So real quick, I'll show you here the jigging on this 56, somewhat similar to the Dogma. The Dogma's jigging is a little bit shallower than you typically see on traditional knives, and then the 97 is even more similar to what's on the Dogma. The Dogma is just a little bit more up and down with the jigging. And then the 97 also has, you would call this a threaded bolster, which is similar to how the Dogma looks. So I thought that was really cool that they incorporated some of those aesthetic design features that you see on traditional knives. But it doesn't really stop there. So if you open this knife, you can see that it has a clip point blade and then this type of handle shape here. And I really think that it's reminiscent of what you would call a Lanny's clip pattern. So I don't have a Lanny's clip traditional knife right now. It's something that you see more on custom traditional knives or higher end traditional knives. GEC hasn't really made one. Case has made them, but they're like $500 because it's a Bose collaboration. And that is who designed this pattern, the Lanny's clip, as a gift to a friend named Lanny. So this Lanny's clip design is a newer pattern, but reminiscent of a lot of other patterns with this almost trapper type handle shape, or maybe you might call it a dogleg handle shape. This is definitely a modified version of that, being that it's a modern knife. And then a clip point with, kind of a sweeping belly here and kind of a big clip to the blade. And it does remind me pretty immediately of a Lanny's clip pattern. So I really like that, especially because, I don't have a Lanny's clip and I would like to have one. And I think it's really cool that they're able to do that, especially considering that it is, it does have the features of a modern knife also. So, as mentioned, this is G10, so it's a composite synthetic material. Which is very strong, very durable. This is the gray version. They do have other versions, other G10 versions with, different colors. And then they also have a couple versions with metal handles. So like copper, brass, things like that also have the jigging, and some of them are even black washed. So modern feature there. And then it's a liner lock. And if you take a look in there, you can see that there's a lot of milling on the liners of this knife. So it keeps it relatively light. And, they actually put a good amount of machining into this knife here on those liners. But it is a liner lock. It locks up really well. You can see it's about 33%, something like that, maybe even 40. No blade play at all. I haven't had to adjust it either. Even when unlocked, there's no blade play at all, side to side. So really impressed by that. And then another modern feature is the pocket clip. So you don't really see pocket clips on traditional knives, but in fact, some people, it would automatically disqualify them as a traditional knife if it has a pocket clip, even though, for example, A.G. Russell makes some knives that I would consider traditional that have pocket clips. But it is a nice pocket clip. It's a deep carry clip. You can see that very little of this blade, or I'm sorry, of this handle, maybe about 1/4 of an inch are going to be sticking out above the pocket clip here. I've carried this knife a lot, and I think that the pocket clip works really well. Sometimes clips, this part here doesn't lift up enough, so it's hard to get them in your pocket. That's not the case here. You can see it, sits relatively high. I was a little concerned that it would create a hot spot, but it doesn't seem to have. I mean, realistically, when you're using a knife, you hold it more like this anyway. So haven't found that to be an issue in use. I've cut a good amount of cardboard with this, as well as some food prep and things like that. So, not the hardest use in the world for sure, but haven't had a problem with it so far. And then as for the pivot here, the pivot has caged ceramic ball bearings. So very, very modern, indeed there, and very smooth also. So I want you to see this flipping action. It's real snappy and real drop closed. So even though there's no blade play, it's super, super snappy. The detent is very dialed in. It is a solid detent too. I mean, it's not going to come out of there on accident. And I like that a lot. And that's been my experience with all knives made by CIVIVI or WE knives. They have, good snappy action. This one is, I think I typically do it mostly push button with a little bit of light switch type action, but you can certainly do both. That's more of a light switch and that's more of a push button. Both work pretty much, the same niceness. They're very snappy and open really easily. Even if I don't put a lot of pressure here, it just has such a strong and solid detent that it's going to snap open. Now, one thing that I don't really prefer is the inclusion of this cutout here on the blade. It looks kind of cool for sure. There's, it's kind of a unique looking, but it's not really functional. So I kind of thought that it was, and I'll give you an example of why here, is that sometimes you can use those cutouts to open a knife. But you can't really on this one. It's not wide enough that I can get my thumb in. I thought maybe I could do a middle finger flick, but it just doesn't really work. So it's not wide enough to get, enough purchase in there that you can use it to open it. And so I just don't think it's necessary. I think it weakens the blade without really any additional, practicality. So I think it would be better off without that. It also doesn't necessarily, if you were maybe wanted to open it with two hands, you certainly can do that without having that hole there, as you can see. So I don't think that hole is necessary. I probably wouldn't have included it if I was designing the knife, but, not a huge deal. As for the blade, it is D2 steel, which CIVIVI seems to use a lot. I like D2 steel a lot. It's technically not stainless, but it does have chromium, so it's close to stainless. And it tends to hold an edge well, and I like it. I've used D2 a lot. The interesting thing here, and I really was hoping that this would come up on camera or show up on camera, is that there's some waviness to the steel. So I don't know if you can see that at all, but especially down here where the grind is a little thinner, and it is a hollow ground knife. Yep, you can see it a little bit there. So there's almost like lines, horizontal lines in the blade. And I don't know what would cause that. I'm not sure if maybe it's like the steel being pulled because of how it's ground. But it's interesting. I had some interesting experiences with a knife made by the same company previously. This knife is S35 VN steel. Long story about why I needed to, but I needed to put bleach on it, and it caused some, interesting patina, I guess you would say, but kind of an interesting, unusual phenomenon there. And again, I hope you can see what I'm talking about, so you're not just like, scratching your head, but there's like horizontal lines that reflect not the way you typically see, and especially because there are also these vertical lines from, the grind. So I'm really not sure what that's about, but I haven't had an issue with the edge holding or anything like that. These, are claimed to be 59 to 61 HRC, which is, I think, pretty reasonable hardness for D2 steel, and it has cut well. I haven't even really needed to sharpen it. I've just stropped it and it stayed pretty sharp. So I've been happy with it. So maybe that's just something with their manufacturing process that makes it look like that. Maybe the polishing process or something, but doesn't seem to have been a practical issue. The blade does seem to be ground really well, actually. You can see it comes to a nice thin apex there. I don't really measure that, but you can see that comes to I think you can see that comes to a pretty nice thickness behind the edge there. So it does cut well. Like I said, it has a hollow grind, pretty tall hollow grind here, and then it has a nice swedge. And I really like the blade shape. You get a little bit of straight edge and then a really nice sweeping belly and a very pointy tip, real pointy tip. So pretty nice blade shape and just a good looking knife, I think. Like I said, it really reminds me of that Lanny's clip pattern, but made modern and in a way that I enjoy. It also has been ergonomic. When I first got it, I was a little bit afraid that the handle was a little small for me, but actually my pinky rests on that flat spot really comfortably in use. And speaking of the size, the blade is 3.46 inches, so just under 3.5 inches, which is a pretty good spot for me. I'll show you some size comparisons here. This is a Spyderco Endura, also in gray, full size, and then a full-size Griptilian. So you can see that the Dogma is a little smaller than both of those, but in kind of a similar blade shape or blade length range. When you come to the Endura, it's a little shorter, but comparable. Now, one thing is that, as you can see, this has this finger choil, and you can certainly use that as, a forward finger choil. A lot of Spydercos have the forward finger choil, but actually this one, the Endura, doesn't. But you do lose some blade edge on that finger choil. And interestingly, if you look, it's actually not necessary. So sometimes a choil will be added because that's where the blade stop pin is, but that's not the case here. So it's actually, the blade stop is on that flipper. It basically sits right there. So this isn't a mechanically necessary finger choil. I guess they just wanted to include it. Some people may like that, some may not. For me, it hasn't really been an issue. It has been enough edge length for what I've needed it for so far, even though I do typically prefer a little bit larger knives, but pretty much in this range, 3.5 to 4 inches, sometimes a little smaller, sometimes a little bigger. But I want to show you some other knives made by CIVIVI, and one thing here also, you can see that it has that C for CIVIVI on the pivot, and I haven't had to adjust it at all. It came perfectly centered and just really nicely made. And I want to show you these other knives made by WE and CIVIVI, which, CIVIVI is WE's budget line of knives, to show you that that's pretty much been my experience. This was the first knife made by WE that I got. Well, at least that I still have. I may have had another one before then, but this was made from Mass Drop, designed by Ray Laconico. This is the Keen. Now this is a little bit higher end knife. This one was about $150, but just really great flipping action. Just really nicely made, nicely designed, nicely ground, just nice. Then the next that I got was this knife. This is the WE Banter. So this is a WE brand knife, but it's designed by Ben Peterson. I got this one also actually was provided to me for review by Ben, and because I criticized the look of it. And while I still think that it's not a great looking knife, it is very blocky looking, it's pretty practical. I mean, it's comfortable in the hand because of that little cutoff there. And more to the point here, it's just well made. I haven't had to adjust this knife in coming up on a year of owning it, and I have, used it a good bit. It also is super smooth, as you can see, really, really nice for a, thumb stud knife, and just nicely made, a really, lightweight little kind of practical knife. And then finally, I have the CIVIVI Wyvern. I got this one because I really like the scales. I like injection molded plastic scales, or covers, or whatever you want to call them, handles. And I think that this design, this pattern is really cool. I also like the coloring that I got on this, the orange with the black blade. And then this one again has a really well done flipper and can also, be open with that hole. And it does have here the choil, which again, as you can see, is not mechanically necessary, but really, really nicely made, and a good deal, I think, on that one too, at under $50. And speaking of this one here, I wanted to also touch on the fact I do have a video on this subject, but that I had really good warranty experience with CIVIVI. And this was before they offered to send me this one for review. So it wasn't like I was already, going to be doing a review for them. I just contacted them because this knife had, after carry and use, the detent got sloppy. And so I emailed seeing if that was something they could fix. They fixed it and had really, really great communication throughout the process. They fixed it quickly and without needing any new parts or anything. So I was really, really happy with my warranty experience on this knife. They do have a US service center, which some people are concerned about. So that makes me more confident about these CIVIVI and WE knives, to know that they have a good, warranty, that they have good service, and that they can be serviced in the US here rather than having to go back to China where they're made. So I appreciate that a lot. And one last thing here on this knife is that this knife from CIVIVI, which you can get it on their website. And by the way, as I'm doing this review for them, I do have an affiliate link where you can purchase the knife through the link, and it really will help the channel. Like I said, I wish that I could buy every knife that I want, that I'd like to review, but it just doesn't work. So when either people or a company like CIVIVI here provides a knife for review, it's really helpful. It allows me to do more reviews of knives that people are interested in. And to keep that going, it certainly would help if you purchased any CIVIVI knives you plan to purchase through the link that I have as an affiliate. The nice thing about it is their prices on their website are actually pretty much, as far as I've seen, always the same as the prices you'll see at dealers. So it's not like you're going to be paying significantly more if you buy it from CIVIVI. And speaking of, from CIVIVI, this knife is about $57, so under $60, and you're getting D2 steel, really nice construction, cool aesthetics, in my opinion, and just a really nice knife. I think that it's a good deal for that price. And one of the biggest things that I think people, make people consider maybe it's not a good deal on these, knives made overseas, is whether or not it has a warranty, right? So if you pay $60 for a knife, but if anything goes wrong, you can't have it fixed, that's no fun, right? And maybe you would rather pay $100 or $120 for a knife that's made in the USA, even though, to be honest, let's be honest with each other, there are very few knives at $100 and even $120 that are made in the USA. There are some, but $100 is tough. It's tough to find a USA made knife for that price. But, you know, maybe you'd rather pay more, significantly more, I guess you would say, knowing that it was made in the USA and it has a warranty. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole, you know, political reasons for wanting a knife to be made in the USA. It's just not something that I want to talk about. I think that there are some valid concerns there, but again, from my experience with CIVIVI, not only do you have a warranty that is, you know, very functional, but the people are nice. I talked with like 3 or 4 different people, and they were all very friendly. And that's really what I think matters. You know, they're just individuals making knives, and this knife, even though it's inexpensive, is backed by a warranty and people who seem to care about the knives that they make. So I think that it's a good deal. I think that I would have been happy with this knife if I had bought it for that price. I think that I would have been, you know, more than happy with my purchase. And I think that if you're looking for a modern knife with some traditional aesthetics, or at least kind of like some inspiration from traditional knives, the Dogma here might be a good option for you. And again, you know, if you do want to purchase any CIVIVI knife, I definitely would appreciate it if you use the affiliate link I have, which will be in the description. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed getting to know this knife, carrying and using it. And if you have, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. You can also subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you get notifications when I post new videos. Also check out my social media at Knife Thoughts on Instagram and Facebook, and my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.